There we go. All right. So anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all of our traditions. Please respect this and treat in confidence who you see and what you hear here. I also want to give you a reminder about my website. It has a lot of information. There's the workbook, there's a guidebook, the lessons are all there. If you ever forget where you put your email with the homework, whatever, you can always go right on my website and grab it. You don't have to wait for me to get back to you via email because sometimes it can take me a whole day or whatever. So if you need to, just go on the website. There's tons of stuff. If that doesn't work, send me an email and just be patient. So I'd like to have everybody join me in prayer for intervention so that we have the gift of an open mind and an open heart, way more beyond what we even intend. Just really try to open yourselves up and be willing to hear the words, even when they don't resonate with you. Just have an open mind about what you're hearing. Sometimes that leads you to something else. So it might not fit you perfectly, but something in there might fit in where you wouldn't expect. If you'd like to read it along or your own, you can either mute or unmute. It's up to you. This is my set aside prayer, and I've told people previously, set aside prayer is fantastic prayer. And what we do in the workshop is we tweak the set aside spirit the prayer to go along with what we're working on. You can tweak it at home even to have it match what's going on in your own life. It really makes a huge difference. And I've told people to use the set aside prayer every day for 30 days, and you will actually start to see amazing results. Just 30 short days, and you'll see a difference. And I can't explain why, I can only say it does work. So, God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my principles, my sponsorship, and you for an open mind and a new experience with myself, and especially my connection with you. So, tonight we begin our journey towards powerlessness with the tools for power already in your toolbox, which are the steps 10, 11, 12. And this is the concept of starting with top three steps and then going back to step one. It gives us that little bit of extra support of that three steps that really helps us. The starting goal is to implement at least 1 minute of intentional consciousness into your daily routine if you struggle with meditation. And do this process with the step 10 tool to remove the disturbances within yourself on a regular daily basis. As you do meditation, you will actually get better at it and you can add more time to it. But if you can't meditate and you really struggle, try 1 minute a day. It sounds like, why bother? 1 minute can make a huge difference. And we do this whenever we're able to stop and access it and to see our behaviors, see where we stand and how we're doing, and are we keeping up with our 10th step? And we do this because of the blocks that will come up inside of us, the blocks of the light of the spirit from our out of control ego. And we ask ourselves, have we been honest? Have we been fair? Are we judging and gossiping? And if we have, we take the time to make the amends and make the correction. Now, this step 10 is an on the spot check, meaning maybe you have a altercation with somebody and you go right into your step 10 and you get rid of it right away. If you can't do that for whatever reason, or you forget, 'cause sometimes I do, you can always do your step 10 at the end of the night and look at it there and do your amends. Get them out of your life. Be done with them. Our vision and intention of studying the 12 steps is to have a spiritual awakening with our newly acquired higher power, or one we've had for some time. Maybe you're all set with your higher power. So we aim to set aside the time in order to do the work needed to attain these goals. And we practice our meditation and we practice our step 10 spot check along with 11 and 12 by carrying this message through sponsorship and step guidance, and we practice these principles in all of our affairs. So the big book was written and the fellowship was created because of the need to address the growing number of people with debilitating addictions. Its main aim was, or still is, to enable people that find the big book to find a power greater than themselves in order to have the support that is needed to solve these problems. The bondage of self, which we see here, is we have lost Lisa and she's bound by all these chains. And the bondage of self means we have had a reliance on our own very limited and very faulty willpower and judgment rather than seeking guidance from a higher power. And this way of living leads to a cycle of trying to control people, places, and things, ultimately resulting in fear, resentment, frustration, and usually more addictive behaviors. And Lisa is lost and she's full of fear because she believes she is a victim of the world she sees. She's chained and she's attached to her source of suffering. And why would anyone want to do that? Have we thought about our bondage and thought, why would I want to do something like that? There's good reason. And to understand this better, we can ask ourselves, where is my life not working? What is the source of my suffering? And we've asked this before, and we will continue to ask it. We're not going to get to a place where we stop saying, hey, what the heck's going on? Why is this wrong? We're always going to want to stop and say, where's my life not working today? And it's important to know the source is the workshop is a progression of self-diagnosis so that you'll get to the root cause of your problems in order to overcome them. And how effective are my efforts? Do the solutions I use on my issues even work? Am I happy with the results of these efforts? Have I had results? We have to think about that. We want to honestly look at what we've been doing and be honest with the results that we're getting. In this one, this is the big question. Do I really want my life to change? Some people don't. Some people are happy in their misery, and that's their choice. Or am I content in my misery because it's familiar and I am afraid to let go? Am I up to the task of what is required for my life to be different? It's a huge endeavor. Is it too overwhelming to even consider tackling? If you're honest with yourself, you'll know. If you are content, that's fantastic. But I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. I think that's wonderful. But if you take an inventory of the major areas of your life and you're not happy with how things are going, perhaps it's time to take a look and do some changing. So I ask myself, what would the changes in my life consist of if I allowed myself to be successful? And it's important to know what you would like to change, or else how would you go about changing them? How do you feel about change? Does it terrify you? Or do you enjoy the changes that come with the life's challenges and the newness that can entail? Guess what the number one reason is that people don't change? It's fear. We get used to something, it appears to us to be normal and comforting. And we're not thinking it should be addressed because we are content with it. It may not be exactly what we want, but it is familiar and manageable. Changing our normal, whether it's our environment, our thinking patterns and behaviors, will bring uncertainty because we don't know what effect the change will have. And with uncertainty comes more fear. So some questions you can ask yourself to determine if your efforts are working would be, is my life moving forward? Do I feel some optimism about my future? Am I checking off things on my to-do list? Do I usually feel happy and positive, or is my past holding me a hostage? So today, what is the invitation in terms of action? And the bigger soul searching question is, what is the purpose of my life? Or even bigger than that, what is the point? Do I believe in destiny? What are we doing on this spinning planet? Why am I here? How did I get here? Where am I going? There's so many questions we can ask. And a lot of them aren't going to give you concrete answers, but what you believe is going to make a huge difference in your life. And that's what we have to get to the bottom of. What do I believe about all this stuff? What do I believe my destiny is? Why do I think we're on this crazy spinning planet? So when we begin this intense journey of the 12 steps, we need to understand that there is a source of power outside of ourselves. And we have had a beginner's experience, and now we're searching for a knowledgeable experience of what the shortcomings in our power that we can address in step one: the body, the mind, and the will, the allergy, the obsession, and the spiritual malady. This leads us to defining what our definition for the power is. Generally, that term is also used for God. Power is the expected outcome because absence of power is my problem. But how and where do I find my higher power? Well, we begin our search for the understanding of power by first identifying it within ourselves. We need this source so that we may expel those dark places in our lives that are blocked from the light. But what is this problem? Why do we struggle to connect? It could be because we have created our own obstacles and they hide in the light, which inevitably block us from the relationship with ourselves even. And this darkness is in me. That is what the big book 12-step process assumes, that I have the darkness within me. It assumes that underneath there is a power and that this power is part of me also. The power and myself are one, but I have been running the show on my own, and the light that I need is being dimmed in order for me to shine my own light. And it does not work effectively because I'm very self-centered and have many self-created blocks to the universe, and they're hindering my relationship with the light, not only my true self, but also blocking relationships with others. And when we talk about relationships with others, we are not referring to people pleasing as this is a selfish, self-centered act. When we people please, we aim to get something out of the behavior, even if it's just to be seen favorably. People pleasing is driven by a fear of rejection, conflict, abandonment, rather than simple kindness. So don't confuse the two if you can stay out of that. Bill refers to steps 10, 11, and 12 by saying, we commence this way of living, and he also says in the beginning of step 10 that the deflation of the ego and the turning to our higher power that we committed to in the third step will be achieved by the time we completely finish the ninth step. Bill's ego deflation means we need to break down our inflated sense of self-importance, selfishness, and stubborn pride, aka self-will, which are viewed as a source of addiction. It is the process of addressing our illusion of control and admitting our powerlessness, leading us to true surrender and truth. Every step is designed to challenge our unmanageability and reduce our ego, making room for honesty, humility, and long-term sobriety. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to live in your own ego self? It is a lot of work. And what exactly is this ego I keep referring to? Bill defined the ego primarily as an inflated, fear-driven sense of self-importance, often referred to as self-will run riot. This addict ego is seen as a distorted mechanism that derives selfish behavior, vanity, and a need for total control, acting as the primary barrier to spiritual growth and sobriety. Bill also said the ego is an obsessive, self-centered force that dictates the addict's life, trying to control people and circumstances to fit their own selfish needs. Bill also explained that his own false ego self was a defensive framework generated by fear, leading to aggression and a victim belief system. He also emphasized that our ego must be deflated in order to allow for humility, which he defines as a clear recognition of what and who we really are, paving the way for recovery. EGO, EGO, is the acronym that Anita reminded us of last week. While not directly coined by Bill W. in the Big Book, many in 12-step fellowships use this teaching to define ego as edging God out, which is fantastic. And Bill did describe the contradictory nature of the ego, claiming that it can make an alcoholic feel superior while also being driven by deep insecurity and low self-esteem. The ego we are talking about is not the same as what we would call self-love. Ego self and self-love are worlds apart. Putting others first, as suggested in step 12, is not done at the expense of our own self-care. It is done in addition to and will eventually add to the love of self, not the ego. On page 25, Bill uses the terminology of a rocket ship that is rocketed into the fourth dimension, and some people might not know what that is. I didn't know for quite a while. I guess just kept skipping over it. Bill wrote the Big Book in 1939, and at that time, he wasn't aware that Einstein had indicated that there was a fourth dimension. Of course, Bill wasn't thinking of that when he used the term fourth dimension anyways, but he was talking about looking at the first three dimensions, width, height, and depth, which is known, of course, as 3D, three-dimensional. The fourth dimension is the immaterial world, the world of spirit, according to Bill. In his terms, we need to get on board on that rocket, and it will take us to where it is going, which is where we need to go. And once we have climbed aboard the rocket, it takes us to where it wants to take us because we're not in control. And then into stage 2, where we will identify and remove our obstacles and shortcomings. And it continues onward to stage 3. Some people mistakenly believe that steps 10, 11, and 12 are maintenance steps, but steps 10, 11, and 12 are our strengthening and growth steps. Pay close attention to step 11 when it says that we improve our conscious contact, and again, listen to step 12 when it says to enlarge your spiritual life, because this is certainly not maintaining, but it is sustaining and expanding, and the rocket metaphor makes it understandable. So although we do the 10, 11, and 12 daily, it's not maintenance. It's a daily set of 3 steps that we take, not to be in maintenance, but to be fresh and clear and new each day. And Bill uses the rocket ship metaphor in the sense that we have been taken to a place or destination in orbit around the light. We have recovered. And we have recovered because we're no longer in bondage of our addiction. That's the first half of the first step. We have freedom. We have been placed in a position of neutrality. And in the first step, it says, we have recovered, no longer in bondage of our addiction. And it is the first half of the first step, which tells us we have freedom. The point of steps 1 through 9 is to deal with our addictions within a program of recovery. My chains of addiction have been released through the truth of the 12 steps, but I still will have a big choice to make because even though my chains have been systematically removed, I am still not recovered in regards to my own will. I'm standing at a crossroad and I need to choose a direction: freedom or suffering, faith or fear. And I notice I am a self-inflicted victim of my own selfish ego. But Bill guarantees we will be recovered by step 10, reminding us that we're placed in a position of neutrality. You can see my chains are removed, my path is clear, the darkness has been removed, and I have come to the unexpected realization that I was the one who held the key to unlock myself from my self-imposed chains of misery. This took me a lot of time and discipline to come to this realization. I added my chains of fear and unmanageability throughout my life to survive and to protect myself, and sometimes to control and manipulate. I can't deny that. And I realized that the fears and other behaviors I exhibited to keep me in control of my life were not working in depleting the quality and the joy. I was literally ruining my own life. When I was able to remove the chains through my higher power's grace that held me down, I finally got free. And through my continual contact with my higher power, I was eventually rocketed into the fourth dimension. And where is that taking me? It takes me into orbit around the light. That is the whole purpose of the rocket launching, to stay in orbit around the light as much as I possibly can. And when we choose the light in step 3, we deflate the ego, and that is what puts us into orbit automatically. Now the light can shine onto us and in us, and eventually through us to others. But we're still not cured. We have a daily reprieve. We have the practice of step 10 and the beginnings of emotional sobriety. When and if we are doing spot checks as we go through our day, we will attain the necessary knowledge and support we have been seeking about the truth. And again, although we're not cured, we have a daily reprieve, which is not to be taken for granted. We have to actively use our 12-step practice while rocketing around that power. Our focus is on our faith, not our fear, and we carry this focus with us everywhere we go. Whatever we focus on, we will get more of. As our focus changes, our life's manageability improves and follows suit. Emotional sobriety, also considered emotional maturity, goes beyond the absence of addictive substances. It's about developing a skill set that enables us to manage our emotions in a healthy way, preventing us from resorting to substances or behaviors as coping mechanisms. This vital aspect of recovery is all about learning to regulate negative feelings, which, if left unmanaged, can cause discomfort, cravings, and potentially relapse. Addiction stunts emotional maturity, often causing arrested development, where emotional growth stops at the age addiction starts. It forces the brain into a survival mode that hampers the development of healthy coping skills, leading to impulsivity, poor stress management, and reliance on substances to numb uncomfortable emotions. which I find so fascinating about the age stopping when the addiction starts. And some of the experience in my life, I can actually meet people and tell you what age they're at based on how they're behaving. It's pretty amazing. So in step 11, which is the prayer meditation step, that improves our understanding by fostering a deeper spiritual connection and guiding us towards a life aligned with our higher powers. It also encourages us to be self-reflective, mindful, and reliant on an outside power for guidance and strength. By actively practicing prayer and meditation, we help build a new routine, we strengthen our mental fitness, and we provide a sense of purpose beyond our addiction. We will gain an understanding of how to navigate our challenges in life and in our recovery. Here's how these two aspects contribute to stronger sobriety. So, carrying the message in step 12 reinforces personal commitment because sharing our experience, strength, and hope with newcomers reminds us of the difficult journey we've overcome and the preciousness of our own sobriety. Helping others find recovery instills a strong sense of purpose and meaning by shifting the focus away from self-centeredness and fostering genuine care for others. Applying the principles of honesty, humility, and perseverance to all aspects of our lives makes recovery a way of life, not just something confined to meetings. And we continue to seek our conscious connection with our higher power through prayer meditation. It helps us maintain inner strength and peace and resilience in the face of all these challenges we're facing. We address our character defects, we admit our mistakes, we seek guidance in order to help us develop emotional resilience and deal with difficulties in healthy ways without resorting to our addictions. This is our new way of life. Our ultimate goal is to be in orbit around that light, an endless journey, and we have a spirituality protective shield. So, a spiritual awakening is a very profound, transformative experience of limitless change, and it involves a shift in consciousness and a reevaluation of our relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the world. It's often characterized by a heightened sense of awareness, a change in our worldview, and a feeling of deeper connection to something larger than ourselves. And it's not a simple change. It is a radical change in the way we think, feel, and behave. It involves a complete overhaul of existing systems, practices, and structures, leading to a new and enlightened state of existence. It's a departure from your status quo, a fundamental shift in how things are done, a complete rethinking of how you show up in your life. How you think, feel, and behave will take on a new, almost unrecognizable version of your old self. And that might sound all pretty overwhelming, but it's really not when it's happening. It's very flow oriented, it's very smooth. It sometimes happens without even realizing it. And this transformation is done to us, not by us, and not without us. And that's why it's so powerful. It is not typical self-development or self-help. It's divine intervention from our source of power. This is why finding our power is so important. We can't do this life alone. It's just too much for us. And our actions and willingness are also imperative. We show up every day and we do our part, which is the footwork, and we allow our higher power to do its part, which is the end result. We are in a relationship with power in order to co-create. It's done to us, not by us, but not without us. So ask yourself, how willing am I? Do I have the inclination to take the necessary steps? Willingness is critical, but without action, it's just not enough. How we choose to behave will tell us how willing we really are. If your feet aren't moving in the right direction, then your willingness is nothing more than just talk. So we have the choice. We make a conscious choice to enter the world of spirit. And we have dealt with our humanity and our addiction, both of which led us to the source of our unmanageability. We have finished step 9, and we've done the often difficult work of making amends and have completed the steps and are ready for step 10. And according to Bill, remember, we're not recovered, not cured. We are recovered, not cured, but recovered from the body and mind aspect of addiction. We have physical sobriety, and that's guaranteed on pages 84 and 85. Bill was very clear about that. But Bill doesn't give us much credit for the effort that we obviously have applied in order to finish that 9th step work. But he did say that we are placed in that position of neutrality for our efforts. But again, we're not cured. We have the daily reprieve, contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And because addiction is a chronic disease, sobriety needs to be maintained one day at a time through our spiritual connection. Bill's statement that we are not cured and that we merely have a daily reprieve highlights the ongoing effort required to manage the disease and emphasizes that sobriety is not a permanent state achieved once and for all, but rather a continuous process of relying on a higher power. When Bill talks about clearing the channel every day, he's referring to the practical clearing one's mind and emotional state of negativity and self-centeredness to optimize our connection with our higher power. In order to make sound decisions, it's about actively managing one's thoughts and emotions to maintain emotional sobriety and spiritual well-being, because we can never be cured of our own humanity. So we set out to clean up our past as much as we possibly can through the 4th step inventory, and we continue on with our new way of living. We continue to remove the obstacles that show up in our day, keeping the channel clear by using the step 10 inventory on the spot. So when the obstacles show up, Bill says, we ask God at once to remove them: selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. And we ask to have them removed immediately. We make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. We start each morning with a clean slate by clearing the channel when we awaken so that we can fill it with the light to carry it into our day. We talk to our higher power for guidance about our day, and we listen for direction. In order to ensure our channel stays pristine, we stick to our meditation schedule on a daily basis. On pages 85 to 88, it summarizes a step 11 meditation script that will give you a description of what to do and how to do it, and the prayers and questions to ask that are a literal translation of the Big Book, adding in your knowledge and your experiences. It makes it easy if you don't have a prayer meditation practice. You can take a look at that and see if that'll help you. And we take our light-filled channel out into the world and we use it in everyday life. We are beacons of light as we sponsor or guide people through this process of recovery. We are a channel of God. My higher power lights the way and it glows through me, reaches out like a beacon through my experience of being on the path and in the flow. I'm confident and secured in my experience that you will have your own experience. And I'm not invested in your recovery, but I am passionate and committed, and I hope and pray that you have this sacred experience also. And a very famous prayer that unquestionably fits this step is the prayer of St. Francis, which is, make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. That's the channel that Bill is talking about. That's what we become. All those things that St. Francis is talking about. So the basic premise of the 12-step meeting is that people can support one another. They can achieve and maintain abstinence from their substance or process addictions to whatever they're addicted to. And they can do this through meetings in which they share their experiences, strength, and hope with one another and support each other in the ongoing effort of maintaining their abstinence. Then, of course, there's the big book, and this is pretty much our instruction manual, and the steps are contained in it, and we follow them continually. It is not a one and done deal. And the 12 steps are a precise process, one that many find difficult to understand at first, and we often need help to figure it out. No matter how intelligent we may think we are, it is about comprehension and truth. Of course, there is prayer because we are powerless alone. We need our higher power to navigate our life, and we connect through prayer or meditation or contemplation, whichever one you choose to use. It's not important what avenue you go down, but what destination you get to. So whatever gets you there, that's what you should use. And the big book suggests contrary action, and we learn how to help other people by going to the meetings and being of service, but also by helping maybe get through the steps or some other way, whatever needs to be done. And I thought for a very long time that meetings were the only way, even when they may have hardly mentioned the steps of the big book. Years ago, that was kind of the thing. I once attended 90 meetings in 30 days. I was very determined, and AA's idea is 30 meetings in 30 days. So I decided to do 90 meetings in 30 days. With the Zoom meetings, we can do that now. We can go to 10 meetings a day. It's pretty crazy. So I did 90 meetings in 30 days. I probably couldn't tell you what I heard, but I made the 90 meetings. But meetings got me sober, but they didn't get me spiritually recovered. My sponsors were mostly sounding boards and life preservers when I was going underwater without my power in place. I needed an in-depth analysis or thorough examination into the steps with the work of step guidance. And more importantly, I needed to walk the 12-step path. The big book doesn't have the word sponsor in it, which is kind of interesting, but it does tell us to carry the message. But it is not talking specifically about sponsorship. It was not a familiar word in the 1930s. But in 1951, Bill wrote the 12 and 12, and he alluded to sponsorship. So in those 12 years, the word sponsor kind of became entrenched into the fellowships. On page 18, Bill says, the problem drinker who has found the solution, who is properly armed with facts about themselves, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours until such an understanding is reached. Herb has a once a month step guide meeting. If anyone wants that information, he does a once a month meeting. You can go in and talk about your sponsorship or your sponsees or get ideas, and it's a pretty good meeting. So on page 18 in italics of the big book, it says, the ex-addict who has found this solution and is sufficiently armed with the truth and facts about themselves can generally win the entire, oh, I just read that, win the entire confidence of another alcoholic. Um, Bill says, we need to be armed with the facts about ourselves. We must complete steps 4 and 5. And until then, we are not equipped to sponsor anyone. It's not hard and fast, but highly recommended. A lot of people don't hear this. I've had people that are sponsors who have been in the program a month and they're sponsoring people, which is commendable that they want to help, but that's not really the best place for them until they get this recovery under their belt and understanding. And you really have to take that 4th step to get to a place where you're going to be able to help people better. So keep that in mind. So Bill says, preach the good word of the big book. Be the way of life. Be the lantern lighting this path, as this is a program of attraction, not promotion. Sobriety, the relief from addiction, comes from a relationship with power. We do all kinds of other things to have a relationship with power. You may say, but I can't do it. I can't work the steps and deal effectively with my addiction or whatever. If I work the steps to have a working relationship with power, eventually I will have been given the gift of neutrality on a daily basis. So it kind of takes care of itself. I strive to navigate life with a sense of order, and my dimmer switch goes up a notch at a time, and I will be in alignment with reality as I understand alignment. And tomorrow, I will have a better and different understanding as my relationship with myself and my higher power gradually expand. The relationship with my higher power has its own life. It's a living entity, and it continues to grow along with me and my relationship. So we're finding our way in this life. We're all human. We'll always be human. And we're learning from our mistakes, which is where our wisdom comes from. And when we learn more, we make less mistakes because we correct them more efficiently. But we will never transcend the fact that we're human. That doesn't mean we can't strive to be as close to not human as we can. I have been given the gift of emotional maturity because I am more often in alignment with reality, with what is real, with what is true, not with my truth, but the truth, the universal truth. I'm in the flow now, and reality happens in the moment, minute by minute, and usually often seconds by seconds. And I stay in the flow now because I'm so aware of it. And I make a very deliberate choice to stay as open and aware as possible in order to stay in my alignment with the flow. When I'm out of alignment, my consciousness lets me know, and I get right back into alignment by using the tools I have acquired. And over time, it takes less time to get back into alignment. In the beginning, it would take me a whole week to realize I was even out of alignment. Now I get out of alignment, and it's maybe an hour or two. I realize something's not working. I've disconnected somewhere. So it's also a process. The longer you do it, the quicker and easier it does get. So Bill and Bob went to hospitals, and they went to the jails and institutions. They went to missions. They went down streets where there were a lot of homeless people, and they basically went wherever problems were with addiction to see if they could bring the 12-step message to the people who are suffering. Not everybody wants help. They might not want to suffer, but they don't want to quit doing what they're doing. They just want to learn how to manage it. And that, as we know, is always going to be impossible. Bill reminds us that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. And that is the first line on page 89, if anybody's interested. So Bill instructs us to practice these principles in all our affairs. Even though he never actually gave us a list of principles in the big book, he has put reference to the principles in chapters 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, all of them, saying to practice these principles in all our affairs, which means we apply the spiritual principles we have learned through the 12 steps to every aspect of our lives, not just during recovery from our addiction. This would involve focusing on the principles like honesty, humility, and service, and implementing them into our daily living, extending beyond the confines of our 12-step programs. This means striving to live a life aligned with the values of the 12 steps in all areas, including but not limited to relationships, work, and our personal choices. Chapter 8 references the wives. Chapter 9 is about the family afterwards. And then chapter 10 is the employers. Chapter 11 is the practice, your principles in your community. And when you're reading the chapters, at some point, look for the principles. Think about when you're reading, what are the principles that are kind of embedded into these chapters? On page 74 of my journey guidebook on my website, there is a list of the principles. And if you are so interested, you could also use these as a meditation. You could do like one a day or one a week or even one a month to allow for some extra guidance to take place. So the 12-step process is not a singular event, but rather a lifelong, continuous cycle of growth and self-discovery. While some view the initial steps as a way to begin the journey, the entire program is designed to be revisited and practiced over time to support ongoing recovery and new behaviors and ideas. So rather than a one-time task, successful members revisit the steps throughout their lives, especially during challenging times. Steps 10, 11, and 12 are specifically designed to be put into action for a lifetime on a daily basis. The steps can also be adapted to our individual needs, granting personal growth and spiritual development, regardless of how a higher power is defined. It doesn't matter. And by integrating these principles into daily life, the 12 steps serve as practical tools for long-term sobriety, not that singular finite event. So just prior to finding the deep dive method of step work, I was in crisis. And as I said, I attended 90 meetings in 30 days. I was getting pretty exhausted. My sponsor kept telling me I needed to pray more, I needed God more, and I was feeling like she was just shoving religion down my throat. So I had to let her go. But that was the beginning of my sponsorship. And I spent a long time treading water and playing with the program. I was recovered, but I knew there was something missing. I tried other methods to feel better, and I was always falling short until I worked the steps. And I mean, worked those steps like it was a business. No more wondering why talk meetings weren't getting me where I needed to go. I was done talking. It wasn't working. I needed more. I needed concrete. And once I digested the 12 steps, I started to emotionally grow up and show up, and I spiritually connected and did the work needed to deepen my connection. I ramped up the amount of work that I was putting into my studies, and I continued to emotionally grow up and connect. Bill calls this a rite of passage in the 12 and 12 and says, this process is bringing children to become adults. As the process of growing up emotionally and spiritually, moving from immature, selfish, independent behaviors to a state of maturity. People frequently get stuck emotionally at the beginning of addiction or at the age they began using. So addiction stunts emotional growth because substances are used to mask pain, avoid difficult situations, and cope with life, preventing the development of mature coping skills and eventually leading to arrested development. I was well aware that the big book says we are not cured until you deal effectively with your unmanageability, but I struggled to understand what was meant by unmanageability. I was so controlling, I thought I had everything managed, so that word just didn't sit with me. In the spiritual malady on a daily basis, that obsession can return at any time. The spiritual shield we thought would always protect us can be pierced, and our thoughts will hijack us with statements such as, "Oh, it'll be different this time," and you know, we will relapse over and over again. It's unrealistic to think that we won't, so it's okay. We can keep going down this road. That's my will. It will always side with me. It doesn't want me to win. And the length of time it takes is entirely up to you. It could be a month, a decade, it could be a moment. And at some point, we're going to wonder, what happened? How did we get here? And if we have a slip or we slide, we wonder, how did we get back there? How did we screw up again this time? How do we keep doing this? Well, because we need to turn. The turning in step 3, which is written as we made the decision to turn, it doesn't say surrender. Surrender is not in the big book. It says we make the decision willingly, decidedly. Step 3 is a ferocious act of our will. The word ferocious highlights that this is not a passive surrender. It is a powerful, intentional effort to stop running the show and acting solely on personal desires, which have previously led to a lot of destruction, especially in our relationships. This is a turning. If you want a litmus test, the question always asked is, what is God's will and what is my will? Within the 12 steps, God's will is interpreted as a path of recovery, serenity, and love, seeking the best for all. While my will, my self-will, is driven by fear, ego, and self-centeredness. In Herb's assessment, he has witnessed a 100% success rate in people whose addictions are put into neutrality at the end of the 9th step, and sometimes even before that, but always 100%, no failures for the people who complete the work involved with the 9th step. And that doesn't mean when you get to the 9th step, life is completely changed. It means when you have completed the 9th step, which for some people can take quite some time. Some people get right through it. Some people drag it out. I have literally seen people drag out the 9th step for years at a time. To be successful, we get through our resentments, we experience forgiveness, perhaps for the first time, and it results in a release of us and a release of them. There is a diminishing of fear, or maybe even near elimination, based on trust and faith, which was my experience. I began completely consumed by my fears and lack of trust in a higher power. When the trust in a higher power came, I went from an agoraphobic with complete lack of trust to recently flying out of the country by myself. The power is very immense. The sex inventory in step 4 is designed to help us confront and understand our sexual behaviors, deviations, and motivations. As the big book advises, we subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? And that's page 69. The sex relationship inventory is a detailed, honest review of past sexual conduct and intimate relationships. It's not just about sex, like some people believe. It is conducted in step 4 to identify selfishness, dishonesty, and fear. And it helps to develop a sane and sound ideal for future behavior, aiming to fix harmful patterns rather than just list partners or events. After completing the sex relationship inventory, we understand how our unhealthy sexual behaviors harmed ourselves and others. We are now guided by the principles, and our behaviors improve vastly. And we become rigorously transparent and honest, which means having our insides match our outsides. Bill emphasizes the necessity of rigorous honesty as a core principle for recovery from alcoholism or any addiction. He states that individuals who cannot or will not be honest with themselves are unlikely to succeed in this program. Bill uses the term rigorous to indicate a level of honesty beyond ordinary or casual honesty. It suggests a deep, unflinching commitment to truth in all aspects of our lives. You've all probably heard we are as sick as our secrets. They say that in meetings all the time. And what that means is that keeping harmful secrets, especially those related to addiction and our past wrongdoings, can really prevent recovery and maintain a level of illness. Secrets fester, leading to self-loathing, shame, and an inability to connect with others, which are all detrimental to overcoming addictions. Releasing these secrets, particularly through steps 4 and 5, is crucial for our healing and recovery. The idea of being as sick as our secrets can apply to other areas of life as well. Secrets can stem from past traumas, negative self-talk, or unhealthy coping mechanisms, and keeping them hidden can definitely negatively impact mental and emotional well-being. So, Bill viewed unhealthy self-esteem as a distortion of reality driven by fear, pride, and the ego, often manifesting as either grandiose superiority or deep inferiority. Conversely, he defined healthy self-esteem as a clear recognition of what and who we really are, rooted in humility and self-acceptance. Bill believed that while alcoholics often suffer from low self-esteem, their conceit and cockiness, false pride, is the primary obstacle to recovery, and that true, healthy self-esteem is only found through the middle course of humility. So in the big book, the phrase a spiritual awakening is the difference between willfulness and willingness. It highlights a critical shift in belief and behavior necessary for recovery. It means moving from a place of stubborn resistance and self-centeredness, willfulness, to a place of openness, acceptance, and a willingness to cooperate and change. This shift is seen as a key component of the spiritual experience or spiritual awakening that can lead to lasting sobriety. In the context of the big book, willfulness is characterized by stubbornness, resistance to outside suggestions, and an insistence on having one's own way, often fueled by self-centeredness and a desire for control. It's the mindset of yes, but, and a refusal to accept what is, clinging to unrealistic desires and trying to force things to be a certain way. Willingness, on the other hand, is about being open to new ideas, accepting the present moment, and being receptive to guidance from others, particularly a sponsor or a higher power. It involves a willingness to let go of control and to cooperate with the suggestions of the 12 steps. It's a state of readiness to change and adapt, to take actions that promote growth and recovery. That concludes the PowerPoint. So I would love to hear from people, whether it's about your homework or what we just did in the PowerPoint or any questions you might have. Please raise your virtual hand And I will try to call on you in order of where you raised. Okay. So nobody has any questions? Hey, go ahead, Susan.
Hello.
Hi,
I
Susan.
I I just it's been a long time since I've read the 12 and 12. And so reading step 12 just read to me like all the promises. Like it was just like this is this is what I can look forward to. And I loved it was on page 114. If we place instincts first, we have got the cart before the horse. We shall be pulled backward into disillusionment. But when we're willing to place spiritual growth first, then and only then do we have a real chance. And it's like it just spoke to my, like I'm really good at fear and anger. And so if I let that rule, it's never going to work out okay. Like so I have to look at the opposite. What is the opposite of all of that? And like those are the things that we're going to find out. But I just really that particular little piece really spoke to me, and I just loved like the whole chapter. It was just like wow. And can Bill ever write?
Yes.
Yeah,
Although he did have collaborators.
that's
Bill solely wrote chapter 5. It was the only chapter he wrote completely on his own.
but it wasn't the
Favorite.
12 and 12 him alone,
The 12 and 12, I don't know about collaboration, but I do only the big book.
the big book. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think that my understanding was the 12 and 12 was his, and it was his experience of recovery.
Yeah.
And I think historically, if like through all the talk about how AA came into light,
Yeah.
the AA members did not want him to write this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's 164 pages, and we look at it like, well, it should be easy. It's not even the whole book, right?
Mhm.
It's
And
a lot.
like for me, like like it was like putting down the alcohol was one thing, but then it like reverts to something else.
Yeah.
And it's just like getting to see, like, for me it turned into food.
Yeah.
And it can go all other sorts of places too, like, so it's just really being aware of that, and
Yeah.
doing this work really does that. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
They do talk about that. It's addiction transference, and people will get over one addiction and then they'll take up another one because they haven't actually implemented the higher power into their life.
Yeah.
Once the higher power enters and you're willing to let things go to the higher power, there's no need for transference. Because when we let go of an addiction that's been doing something for us, and we didn't haven't gotten to the place where we realize our higher power can take the place of that, we're naturally going to fill it in with a new addiction
Hmm.
or a new person. If we're in relationship stuff, with whether codependent, Al-Anon, those type of things,
Yeah.
I'll get a new husband. That'll change things. Different face, same
Yeah.
problem.
And behaviors come into play too. Like, I
Yep.
mean, I think those behaviors are always there. No, I shouldn't say that. But anyway, yeah, different coping
Yep.
mechanisms surface.
Yep. Thanks, Susan.
Yep.
Go ahead, Carol and Lonnie.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lonnie.
I just wanted to say, when I was young, I used to pray on a regular basis daily, but it was essentially a rote memorization that really didn't mean very much. I look back at it and went, it was tradition, but it wasn't meaningful.
Yep.
Now, Carol and I meditate and or pray on a regular basis for a half hour, and I find it very comforting, soothing, inspiring, and it sets the tone for the day. So I think there's something to be said for it.
Yep. You're doing it perfectly right. That's the best way to do it. That 10, 11, 12, that meditation in the morning. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it does help out. It helps set the tone for the day.
It does. That morning meditation, I think, is almost more important than doing the review at night because if you start off your day in that right state of mind, chances are you're probably going to stay in that right state of mind. And that's the goal, to stay there, to stay in that God mind.
And I just like to say that um, I have found that I really do have my God consciousness throughout the day. And if I get frustrated about something or angry, I do take that pause and I think about my higher power and I ask for guidance, and it helps. It really,
Right, right.
yeah.
That's fantastic. And the more you do that, the more it'll come. It's like anything else that we practice. The more we join our practice and we continue to do whatever we do that works, it grows. Anything that we focus on is going to grow. So if you're going to focus on your faith is going to grow. If you're going to focus on your addiction's going to grow. It's like watering a plant. Same process.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lisa.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, sure. Can I go off the book and then come back on?
Yeah.
So I so yeah, I kind of like it was kind of interesting because like I went through like the assignment, and I was just looking at it like because it was like it kind of hit me like much harder is, and I was like, wow, this really. I had a friend of mine when I was in my bottom along the lines of the addiction that I'm working on, and she had said to me like, this is mental illness, and like on the outside I was just like kind of like, yeah, it's a bad bottom, but it's okay. I mean, on the inside of the bottom, that's what I was thinking, but just like according to like the big book, an illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it is an illness, involves those about us in a way no human sickness can. And I just had to kind of like write that down because it's true. Like when I look at even some of the short term wreckage that I have currently with this addiction, like I have people really upset with me. Like I have, for example, I have one office, they call me and I answer the phone, but they don't like the way I answer the phone, so they keep hanging up on me. So I'm trying to talk to them, you know what I mean? And I'm not avoiding them, but I answer the phone and I say my name, and they hang up the phone. And so they'll call me 2 or 3 times and I'm answering the phone and they hang up the phone because they don't like what I say. I'm not saying something nasty. I'm just not saying what they want me to say on the other line. I'm like, hello, how are you? And they just click, it's and I get the impression they're very upset because they're calling like 3 or 4 times, but I'm not avoiding them. And that's just like a minor example, but there are other examples of like how people are not necessarily totally chuffed with me. And I think just another quick thing, like it engulfs all lives that touch the sufferers, and so it's like all the people around me, the people in my family, and then also like because I have people in my family who also suffer from this, I was able to kind of like detach from my stuff and look at like my mother and my aunt and say like, wow, you know what I mean? Like I can see how the stuff they're doing affects others. Because I know sometimes the stuff that my aunt does affects me, and sometimes the stuff my mother does affects me. Um, and yeah, just this stuff. Like I broke it down into actually those 8 different points. I'm not going to read them all, but like one, misunderstanding, two, fierce resentment, and it just goes down, and I just mapped it out because I don't have to have all of them from this addiction, but there's enough of them to really kind of see like, wow, that's something to kind of continue to bring to God about to remove from my life. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Sounds good, Mark. You're making great progress. You really are. I know sometimes it's hard to see our progress. Um, and I've heard people say that when we think about ourselves or we do our own work, it's like holding the information's right here. But when we hold the information out here, out arm's length, we can see it better, which is why we can see it better in other people. We're too close to ourselves to see our own crap, basically. And when we pull the information out, we put it on someone else, we can see it better. And the important step is to not see it as their problem, but when we see it in someone else, or we see something in someone else that starts our heart pumping or gets our emotions going, we have to stop and look at it and say, why am I having this effect? Why is this bothering me? What about what they're doing is getting to me, and why? Because we're always responsible for our own upset. So when those people come into our lives that upset us, we can see them as a gift, because they're going to show us real fast and real neatly what our problems are if we're willing to see them. So the people in our lives, some refer to them as the bastards, are our greatest teachers, because our problems are always ours. So when we're looking out and we're seeing somebody doing something and it's really bothering us, we go inside and we say, that's interesting. Why is that bothering me that they're doing that? I need to look inside me and see how I connect to those behaviors. Just a reminder, the homework is not the most important thing that you're going to do every week from week to week. Showing up is 1,000 times more important than the homework. Don't bust your asses trying to get that homework done, but do make the effort to show up, because this is where the recovery is going to come from. Reading the book is great. It's the icing on the cake, or doing the assignments. Absolutely are going to add to the amount of time you spend in your recovery. But if it's stressing you out, or you can't get the time, or you feel like you just want to give up, put it down, put it aside. Sobriety is more important than anything you're going to learn in those books, in those lessons. And the goal is not to get your homework done, it's to have a spiritual awakening. So that's the focus. That was why Bill wrote the big book, was to tell people how to have a spiritual awakening. That's the point. If you feel like you're in the workshop and you're not getting enough information and you have the time, absolutely do the work, watch the extra videos, watch Herb's extra videos, do as much as you can. But that goes both ways. Don't feel like, oh man, I'm not getting to my homework. I'm getting behind. I'm gonna walk away. It's easier to walk away than catch up. It's never ever going to be about those homework assignments. This is about learning how to get to your higher power. Because once you do, everything else just literally falls off. It just goes away. I don't even know where it goes, but it just goes away. So focus on showing up with the intention of learning about your higher power. That's the most important work you're going to do. You could walk away from the 12 steps and never do another step again if you have a solid, firm relationship with your higher power. But that's what all this work is about, getting you to that place where you connect with that higher power and you live in that place where your higher power is running the show. Because as soon as we don't let our higher power run the show, in comes all the crap, especially addiction. So please don't beat yourselves up about not getting the homework done. As you see, I have never checked on it. I've never said, show me your homework. Although when we do the drawings, I would love to see them. But there's no requirement here other than show up and absorb as much as you can to get you to that higher place. And there's people in this room that have gotten there. I've seen them do it, that can tell you that that is what's going to happen. It is going to happen. But you got to be there. You got to show up. And like I said, if you have the time and you have the inclination, do the extra work. If the extra work makes you not want to do this, don't do the extra work, but keep doing this, finding this place in your heart where your higher power lives. Don't let anything sabotage it, because we're great at self-sabotaging, especially something as silly as a homework assignment. It's not worth it. So I'm going to do the serenity prayer if anyone wants to join in. You can unmute. If not, that's okay too. God,
God,
please grant
grant
us
serenity
serenity,
to accept
accept
things
Things
we
we
cannot change,
courage to
courage
Courage
to
to
change
change the
the
things we
things we
can,
can,
and wisdom to know
and
the
wisdom
difference.
to know the difference. Keep coming
Thank
back,
you.
and just keep your channels clear.
Thank
Till next
you.
time.
Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I'll see you next time.